Picture this. You've spent months, maybe years, building what you believe is a solid survival stockpile. Shelves lined with canned goods, bulk dry foods, enough supplies to keep your family fed through whatever comes next. You feel prepared. You feel protected. But here's the number that should stop you cold. Up to 40% of home survival stockpiles are eventually thrown away, completely unused, not because a disaster came and the food ran out, not because the family evacuated, but because of silent, invisible mistakes made the very day the stockpile was built that quietly destroyed everything from the inside out. And the most dangerous part? You won't know it's happening until it's too late. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 15 deadly mistakes that are destroying survival stockpiles all across the country. From a colorless, odorless poison that gives you zero warning before it paralyzes you, to a storage habit so common that almost every prepper does it, one that rusts your cans from the bottom up in a spot you'd never think to check. We're covering all of it, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to audit your current stockpile, fix what's broken, and build a system that will actually be there when your family needs it most. So stay with us until the end, because the last mistake we cover is the one that makes every other mistake on this list permanent. Welcome to Crisis Horizon, where we give you the knowledge to survive what's coming. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now. And if you're serious about protecting your family, drop a like before we dive in. Let's get into it. There's a version of preparedness that looks good on the surface. Rows of canned goods neatly stacked. A sense of security every time you walk past the storage room. But looking prepared and being prepared are two entirely different things. And the gap between them starts with a question most people never think to ask. Can you actually cook what you've stored? Think about that for a moment. Every electric stove in your home becomes useless the moment the grid goes down. Every gas burner becomes a liability if the municipal supply is interrupted. And if the only can opener in your kitchen is the electric one mounted under your cabinet, then every single item on those shelves might as well be sealed in concrete. You cannot access it. You cannot eat it. Those calories are worthless. This is not a small oversight. This is a foundational failure, and it happens to people who are otherwise genuinely committed to being prepared. The fix is straightforward, but it has to be intentional. First, own at least 2 high-quality manual can openers. Not 1, 2, because manual tools fail, handles break, and in a crisis, you do not want to be standing in your kitchen with a can of beans and no way to open it. Second, invest in alternative heat sources before you need them. A propane camping stove, a butane burner, an outdoor charcoal setup, something that functions completely independently of your home's power and gas lines. And third, this is the step almost everyone skips. Actually calculate how much fuel a 30-day cooking scenario requires for your specific household. How many meals per day? How long does each meal take to cook? How much propane does your stove burn per hour? Run the numbers. Stock to that number. Anything less is an assumption, and assumptions get families into trouble. But here's something that compounds this problem in a way that almost no one prepares for. What if your family refuses to eat what you've stored? There's a persistent myth in preparedness communities that says under enough pressure, people will eat anything. Hunger is the great equalizer, right? That's wrong. Dangerously wrong. The science of stress physiology tells us that crisis conditions don't flatten food aversions, they amplify them, particularly in children. A child who refuses to eat lentil soup on a calm Tuesday is going to have a significantly stronger reaction to lentil soup on the 3rd day of a disaster. The body is under stress. The nervous system is activated. Comfort and familiarity become psychological necessities, not luxuries. And when a person, child or adult, can't bring themselves to eat what's available, they start to underconsume. They skip meals, their caloric intake drops, and now you have a crisis inside your crisis. Energy crashes, cognitive function deteriorates, decision-making suffers, all because the stockpile was filled with food the family never actually tested. Preppers call this palate fatigue, and it is a real, documented phenomenon. The solution is called the buy 2, try 2 rule. Before you commit to buying any item in bulk, prepare that item in 2 different ways on 2 separate occasions and see how your household actually responds. Not hypothetically, not I think we'd eat this if we had to. Actually cook it. Actually eat it. If the family pushes the plate now, they will push it away during a disaster. Find out before you've spent $300 on food your family won't touch. Now let's talk about the environment your food is living in, because here is something that catches almost every new prepper off guard. Canned goods are not indestructible. They are not immune to their surroundings, and the conditions inside most homes, garages, basements, spare rooms, can silently degrade an entire stockpile in ways that are impossible to see until the damage is already done. Let's start with something simple: expiration dates. Most people treat the best by date printed on a can as a safety deadline, as if the moment that date passes, whatever's inside becomes dangerous. That's not how it works. Best by dates are manufacturer recommendations for peak quality, for optimal flavor, texture, and nutritional density. They are not a line between safe and unsafe.
Here's what the actual timeline looks like. High-acid foods, tomatoes, citrus-based products, anything with vinegar, maintain their quality for roughly 18 months. Low-acid foods, canned meats, vegetables like corn and green beans, soups, can remain at high quality for 2 to 5 years when stored properly, and properly stored cans remain microbiologically safe well beyond even those windows. So the real question is never, what does the label say? The real question is, what does the can look like? Is it bulging? Is there visible rust along the seams? Does it spurt liquid when you puncture it? Does the inside smell wrong when you open it? Those are your actual safety indicators, not a printed number on the bottom of a can. But here's where this connects to a mistake that almost nobody thinks about: light. UV radiation does two things to your stockpile. First, it gradually degrades nutrients inside the cans, breaking down vitamins, affecting food quality over time in ways that accumulate slowly and invisibly. Second, and more immediately practical, it breaks down the ink on your labels. A stockpile you cannot read is a stockpile you cannot manage. If you can't identify what's in a can, you can't rotate it, you can't track it, you can't consume it intelligently. You're just guessing, and a stockpile managed by guesswork is not really managed at all. The fix is simple: store your food in a dark space, or if your storage area has windows or light exposure, keep cans in opaque bins or inside their original cardboard boxes. Block the light completely. This costs you nothing but awareness. Now here is one that is going to surprise you, and it's one of the most physically damaging mistakes a prepper can make without even realizing it. Are your cans sitting directly on a concrete floor? If they are, stop and move them the moment this video ends. Concrete is hygroscopic. That means it absorbs moisture from the air around it and releases it back depending on temperature conditions. When the temperature in your storage space shifts, which it does constantly with the seasons, with day and night cycles, condensation forms on the surface of the concrete, and the cans sitting on that surface are resting in that moisture. Rust doesn't start on the side of a can where you'd see it during a casual inspection. It starts on the bottom, the base seam, the part that's sitting in direct contact with the damp floor. And by the time you flip a can over and notice the rust, it's already been compromising that seal for weeks or months. A failed base seam allows oxygen to enter. Oxygen entering a sealed can means spoilage, and you likely would never have caught it because you were only looking at the label side. The fix is non-negotiable. Every piece of food in your storage needs to be elevated at least 6 inches off the floor. Pallets, wire shelving, plastic bins, whatever works for your space, but nothing touches the concrete directly. And while we're talking about the environment your food lives in, we have to talk about temperature, because this is where the numbers get genuinely alarming. The USDA recommends storing canned goods between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a narrow window, and most people are storing their food in garages, attics, or sheds where they have absolutely no idea what the temperature is actually doing throughout the year. Here's what happens outside that window. In a hot garage during summer months, temperatures can regularly exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit. At those temperatures, the seam integrity of cans begins to degrade. The internal linings, the coating that prevents metal from leaching into food, start to break down. This can happen in as little as 1 month of sustained heat exposure. At the other extreme, freezing temperatures cause liquids inside cans to expand, and that expansion puts stress on seams that can split them open. You need a minimum-maximum memory thermometer in your storage space. This is a device that tracks and records the highest and lowest temperatures reached over a given period, even when you're not watching. It costs almost nothing. It tells you everything.
If your storage space is consistently pushing past 90 degrees, the food needs to move, full stop. And linking directly to temperature is humidity, because rust on your cans is not a cosmetic problem, it is a structural failure in progress. Damp basements and laundry rooms are some of the most common storage spaces preppers use, and they are some of the most hostile environments for metal containers. Even moderate, consistent humidity is enough to begin the oxidation process on can surfaces, and once rust takes hold on a seam, the hermetic seal, the airtight closure that makes canned food safe for long-term storage, is at risk. In any storage environment with measurable humidity, a dehumidifier is not optional. It is not a luxury item. It is a core component of your food preservation infrastructure. Treat it like you treat your shelving and your thermometer. It belongs in the system. Now we need to slow down, because what comes next is not just expensive, it can be fatal. Botulism. Botulism is a paralytic illness caused by a neurotoxin produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum, and this toxin thrives in exactly one kind of environment: anaerobic, low acid, and sealed, which is precisely the environment inside a canned good. The reason botulism is so specifically terrifying in a survival context is that the toxin is completely colorless and completely odorless. You cannot detect it by looking at the food. You cannot detect it by smelling the food. You cannot taste it. By the time you know it's there, it's already inside you, and the paralysis it causes, beginning with the facial muscles and moving downward, can be fatal without immediate medical intervention. In a disaster scenario, that intervention may not exist.
So you have to know the warning signs before you ever open a can. A bulging or swollen can end is an immediate disqualifier. Pressure building inside a can almost always indicates bacterial activity. A can that spurts liquid or foam when punctured must be discarded immediately and handled carefully. Leaking seams, cloudy liquids inside the can, or any visible mold, all of these are disqualifying signs. Do not taste test to confirm. Do not give it the benefit of the doubt. Discard it and wash your hands thoroughly. And for anyone who home cans their own food, this is critical. Water bath canning, which is the most common home canning method, does not reach temperatures high enough to kill botulinum spores in low-acid vegetables. Corn, green beans, beets, carrots, these must be pressure canned. The pressure canner is what drives internal temperatures to the level required to destroy spores. Using a water bath canner on low-acid vegetables is a documented, preventable, and potentially fatal mistake. Now, on the structural side of biological threats, let's talk about dented cans, because most people get this wrong. Not all dents are the same. A shallow, smooth dent on the body of a can, the cylindrical middle section, is generally safe. The metal has flexed, but the integrity of the can is intact. This is not ideal, but it is not automatically a cause for discard. A dent on a seam is a completely different situation. The seam is where the lid meets the body of the can, the junction that creates the hermetic seal. When that junction takes a dent, even a small one, it can create microfractures in the internal protective coating, and it can compromise the seal itself. This is a disqualifying event. That can needs to go. The other factor is geometry. Sharp, angular dents with creases are significantly more dangerous than smooth, rounded indentations. A crease indicates that the metal has been sharply stressed, which increases the likelihood of invisible damage to the seam coating or seal. When you're evaluating a dented can, you're asking two questions. Where is the dent, and what does it look like? Location and geometry both matter. Understanding the physical and biological threats to your stockpile is essential, but none of that knowledge saves you if the system holding your stockpile together is broken, and for most people it is. Let's talk about rotation, specifically the failure to do it. When people add new cans to a stockpile without a system, they almost always place them at the front. It's natural, it's convenient, but what it means is that the newest food is always what gets used, while the oldest food keeps getting pushed further back, deeper into the shelf, harder to reach, and eventually invisible.
This is called front-loading, and it is how perfectly good food quietly passes its optimal window, degrades in quality, and eventually gets thrown away, not because of any disaster, but because it was never rotated.
Never consumed, never replaced. The solution is a principle called first in, first out, FIFO. The oldest food is always the most accessible. The newest food goes to the back. This can be managed manually by labeling shelf sections with purchase dates and being disciplined about how you add new stock. Or it can be automated with gravity-fed can rotation racks, which physically move cans to the front as they're removed. Either approach works. The key is that the system is consistent and requires no memory to function. Which brings us to the memory problem itself. Once your stockpile grows beyond what you can see at a glance, your brain stops being a reliable tracking system. People who rely on memory consistently overbuy items they already have in abundance while running critically short on essentials they forgot to check. This isn't carelessness, it's just how memory works under the cognitive load of daily life. You need an external system, a simple spreadsheet, a dedicated notebook, an app on your phone, whatever format you will actually use. Track every item by name, quantity, and expiration date. Update it every time something goes in or comes out. This document becomes the brain of your stockpile, and it makes the difference between knowing what you have and assuming what you have. Now let's talk about the containers your food is living in, because this one damages stockpiles in ways that are slow, physical, and very hard to undo. Retail cardboard, the boxes your canned goods come in from the store, is designed for transport. It is not designed for storage. Cardboard is attractive to pests. Rodents and insects can work through cardboard without significant effort. Beyond that, cardboard absorbs moisture from the air around it, weakening structurally over time. Weakened cardboard collapses under weight. Collapsed stacks mean dented cans, and you already know what dented cans can lead to. The right containers are food-grade plastic bins with secure, tight-fitting lids, or 5-gallon buckets sealed with gamma lids, the screw-on style that provides a genuine environmental barrier. These create a physical wall between your food and the moisture, pests, and structural failures that cardboard simply cannot resist. But all of these organizational fixes, rotation systems, inventory logs, proper containers, mean very little if your fundamental relationship with your stockpile is wrong. And for most people, it is. Here is the most common conceptual error in all of preparedness. Treating your stockpile like a reserve, sealing it off, putting it in a room and not touching it, telling yourself it's there if you need it. When you don't use your stored food, you stop noticing when it expires, you stop practicing the cooking methods required to prepare it, and your family never becomes accustomed to the diet, which loops us directly back to the palate fatigue problem we covered earlier.
A stockpile that your family has never eaten from is not a tested resource. It's a hypothesis. Your stockpile needs to function as a working pantry. Pull from it every week as part of your normal meal planning. Replace what you use immediately. And once a month, run what serious preppers call a trial week. 7 days where your household eats only from stored supplies, using your manual can openers and your alternative cooking equipment. This exercise will reveal every missing tool, every food your family won't eat, and every gap in your preparation that wasn't visible from the outside. It sounds demanding, but 1 week a month of intentional practice is infinitely less demanding than discovering those gaps in the middle of an actual emergency. Now, here is something important to understand about mistakes. Individual mistakes on their own are recoverable. One bad can is not a crisis. One forgotten inventory item is not a collapse. What transforms individual mistakes into catastrophic failures is the absence of a system that catches them regularly. A quarterly review is the glue that holds every other piece of this together. 4 times a year, pull everything off the shelves. Count every item against your inventory list. Check every can for physical damage, dents, swelling, label integrity. Verify that your thermometer is reading acceptable temperatures. Check your dehumidifier. Replace any fuel or batteries in your emergency equipment. Then put everything back, organized and documented. This review is not complicated, but it is the mechanism that prevents small errors from compounding into silent disasters over the months and years between now and whenever the stockpile is actually needed. And now we arrive at the first mistake, the one at the top of the list, the one that makes every other mistake permanent. It is the gap between knowing and doing. Everything in this video is information you can act on today. The manual can openers, the thermometer, the elevation off concrete floors, the FIFO system, the inventory log, none of it is complicated. None of it requires significant resources. All of it is within reach. And yet most people who watch a video like this, who take notes, who genuinely feel motivated by what they've learned, most of them will not act on it. Not because they don't care, because the urgency of the moment fades and the stockpile stays exactly as it was. And 6 months from now, all of those quiet threats are still working. So here is a specific plan, a 30-day transformation from wherever you are right now to a professionally managed, genuinely reliable food supply system. In the first week, conduct a full inventory. Pull every item you have, log it by name, quantity, and expiration date. Flag anything within 6 months of its date. This is your baseline. Without it, nothing else is meaningful. In the second week, reorganize everything using the FIFO principle. Oldest items to the front, newest to the back. Label your shelf sections by purchase date if you need to. Make the organization visible and self-explanatory so that anyone in your household can maintain it without instruction. In the third week, run the trial. 1 full week eating only from your stockpile, preparing every meal using your manual tools and alternative heat sources. This is the test that reveals everything. Every missing utensil, every food your family resists, every cooking method you haven't practiced. Take notes, address every gap before the month is over. In the fourth week, audit the environment. Get the plastic bins or buckets, move every can off the concrete floor, install your minimum-maximum thermometer, address the humidity situation in your storage space, make the physical environment work for your stockpile instead of against it. At the end of 30 days, you won't have a pile of canned goods in a room. You'll have a system, a living, managed, tested resource that you understand and that your family can actually use. Preparedness is not a project you complete, it is a system you run. Start this weekend, 30 minutes. Find 10 random cans in your storage and inspect them. Seams, dents, swelling, rust, labels. Write down what you have. That list is the beginning of everything. Those 30 minutes are the actual difference between a stockpile that looks like it works and one that will be there when it genuinely matters. If this video gave you something useful, share it with someone who's building their own stockpile. Subscribe to Crisis Horizon if you haven't already. We put out content designed to give you real, actionable knowledge for real scenarios. And drop a comment below. Tell us which of these 15 mistakes you're tackling first. We read every one. Stay prepared. We'll see you in the next one.